for them. These guys need to be kept a little bit more dry in the summer and like a bit more water in the winter, which can be kind of backwards, and that took me a little bit to get the hang of, because my lithops I wasn't watering in the winter, and I assumed that these guys were the same. But I'm finding these guys are a bit more along the same lines as Conophytum. I haven't been able to find a ton of information saying clearly, you know, this is when they are always growing and this is when they aren't. But from my experience, they tend to be more winter growers and a bit more dormant and quiet in the summer. Which makes sense because they like partial shade to bright light. They don't require really, really bright sunlight. So in their native environment, when it's really hot in the summer is when they're having their rest period. Let's see, as far as soil, these guys usually grow in very sandy or calciferous soil. I like a mixture of pumice and sand. They really don't like a lot of organic matter. I haven't been able to find a lot of people giving reasons for why they don't like organic matter, so I can't say for 100% sure. Oops, I'm sorry. For 100% sure. But from my experience, which has been quite a few years now, the succulents that don't like organic matter, I think it's the bacteria and the fungus and the different live organisms in the soil that bother them, actually more than the moisture retaining properties of it, because sand can be pretty water retaining at times, and they don't have a problem with that. But if they get nicks, if their roots get damaged, if their leaves get damaged, if they have normal potting soil, they tend to get rot or bacterial or fungal infections a lot faster. That includes these guys and lithops and a lot of the messemes. Not all succulents, but a lot of the messemes in particular. And we're getting just a kitty butt here too. But the bacteria and the living organisms seem to be the problem in my experience. And so that's why less organic material tend to be better. That way, if you accidentally damage the roots or they get a little, damage on their leaves or something from a pet or a kid or something, or even us, so just dealing with the plants, it's easy to nick one or damage one. The less organic material that you have in their potting mixture, the less likely it is that they're going to be overtaken with something like that. And I think they just don't have the immunities to deal with a lot of the bacteria found in organic matter and decomposing material, because they're not supposed to. That's not prevalent where they usually grow. So that is my kind of theory, but it's a theory very, very much based on the scientific knowledge and information that I have based on other plants. A lot of the bacteria that are harmful for these guys are actually really helpful for other plants, but not them. So generally avoiding a lot of organic material is ideal. The only organic material I find that is okay for me here has been coconut husk. I think it just doesn't, it's a bit cleaner and it just doesn't harbor the same bacteria for some reason as some of the other organic material in compost that tends to be in potting soil mixes. Some people say they can tolerate some peat, that they don't mind a little bit of acidity, but I don't like the peat because when it dries out, it forms kind of a crust on the top and then it's really hard to water. So I like a really gritty mix that dries out really fast. I plant these in shallower pots. If this was a normal terracotta pot that was deeper, it would hold too much moisture. So I use a more shallow pot. They just don't need the depth for their roots. What else can I tell you about these guys? The areas that they're native to in Africa and Namibia are the areas that get the most winter rains. Um, and so that's why in the summer they don't like as much water. It's just because of what they're used to. It's because of the environment that they grow in. And when I say a lot more winter rains, it's still a very small amount. I believe it's less than 10 millimeters a year. No, it's less than 100 millimeters a year. But that's not much. And so um, again, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I am afraid that people will take my statements as rules. And keep in mind that when we're growing these outside of their natural environment, we let them stick up, which lets them have a lot more evaporation of water. It lets them have a lot more sun exposure and a lot more, they're doing a lot more photosynthesis work. So the plant actually uses more water than it does in its native environment. So just because you read that they get, 100 millimeters or less of water in the desert doesn't mean that that is how you should care for them in this environment. And I think that gets really confusing for a lot of people, because when you read what their native environment is, a lot of times we think, oh, we just need to mimic that. But our whole environment isn't able to mimic that. If you had a greenhouse that was able to entirely mimic its natural conditions, then yes, it would be just fine. But because we change their growth habits a bit and let them stick out in different things, we have to also change their care a bit, and they require more water in captivity. That's the only word I could think of at the moment. But in cultivation, they require more water than they do in their natural native environments, at least from my experience. If you guys have other questions, please feel free to ask. I never know if I am giving way too much information or leaving things out, because I just geek out on these plants, and for whatever reason my brain can retain all types of facts and Latin names and random things and just recall them super easily. But if you tell me your name, I won't be able to remember it. And that is so the truth. I have such a time remembering people's names and different things, but then plants, for whatever reason, I seem to be able to remember. So I get to rattling off about these guys. I don't write up a lesson plan or anything for making these videos. And maybe I should start doing that so that I could stay on track a little better and didn't ramble quite as much. That's a good idea. But for now, with the amount of energy I have currently, I just ramble on. And if I miss things or if something is confusing, please always feel free to ask in the comments below. Occasionally I miss and don't reply to a comment. The more comments I'm getting, sometimes I'm not able to reply to them all, but I definitely try. And me being in bed a lot gives me extra time, so I can reply to questions. If you have extras about these guys, but I had a couple requests to do a video on their care, and I thought I would do that this morning since I had just uploaded the video about the varieties and the different names. Hope this has helped some of you guys. I'm sorry this has gotten so long. But I hope the information has been helpful, and I hope you guys have an amazing day and happy growing.